All right, we're kicking off this Wednesday edition of the SportsMax Zone with football. We're now deeply entrenched in the business end of the Ray and Nephew Jamaica Premier League. And if the quarterfinal matchups were anything to go by, the tension in the semi-final round will be palpable. And it will be made even more intriguing as the Montego Bay Sports Complex will be the venue for the first leg matches. Cavalier against Arnett Gardens starting at 6 p.m. local time, 7 in the rest of the Caribbean. And hometown team Montego Bay United welcoming regular season table toppers Mount Pleasant at 8:30 Jamaica time, that's 9 ECT. There are talking points galore ahead of these ties, and our in-house football analyst, Leger Williams, has been with us every step of the way. He joins us again. Well, Lish, a lot to talk about. You can hear the excitement in my voice. I'm not even sure, which matchup to start with, but I think it might be fitting if we go with Montego Bay against Mount Pleasant first. And I want to spend some time today talking a bit about Mount Pleasant because, they've had a bit of a rest, a bit of a break. They're getting ready for Mount Pleasant. And we also know they've been in the headlines, Lish, with that controversy, of course, that has been sorted now. Firstly, does that affect them in any way?
Well, I mean, for their sake, I hope not, because they'll have a very difficult proposition, facing Montego Bay. It would be difficult already, but the fact that they have to play the first leg in Montego Bay in front of that home crowd, albeit I'm sure Mount Pleasant will bring a lot of fans themselves, but I think it's going to be a very difficult tie. It's a very tough one to call for sure, and I'm definitely looking forward to that one to serve up some really good football.
You say that about the fans, and I'm going to ask this out of ignorance because, of course, I'm not Jamaican, despite all of you wanting to adopt me. I'm going to ask you, right? And any one of y'all can probably tell me if you have anything to say. Is it common in Jamaica for, in Montego Bay, for there to be major supporters of, let's just say, of Mount Pleasant? Is that uncommon?
I think in terms of Mount Pleasant specifically, because they're in St. Anne, it's not as far away as, because most of the clubs, I would say, are much further away than Mount Pleasant would be. So I think it's pretty common, for Mount Pleasant to have good support anywhere they go, but especially in Mobay, because it's an easier journey for them. So that's why I'm looking forward to a really good crowd.
And their coach has a Mobay background.
Yeah, exactly.
Theodore Whitmore.
That's why I asked. All right, so as you could tell now, the excitement is even bigger. Yeah. So talk to me now about the tactics, because I'm thinking the two coaches, Liz, he's smiling, he's happy. The two coaches going up against each other, one getting a little more rest than the other, but we're going to take that factor out. How do they line up? What happens?
Yeah, this is why it was particularly intriguing to me. I learned a lot the second to last time they would have faced off. In the second round of the regular season, that game showed a lot. It was a TV game. It showed a lot about how Montego Bay would approach things. They were under new management at the time. Paul Teagat Davis had just come across, so I don't quite think he got his tactical ideas across as yet. We saw much more of his ideas come to fruition in the quarter-final round against Tivoli, where they played a lot of good football. But I think it's all going to be about the technical security of both teams, because both teams, I think, are the best in-possession teams in the Jamaica Premier League. And I have an example of that as well when it comes down to Mount Pleasant. Funny enough, I meant to speak about this when we were reviewing the game that they played so long ago, a couple months ago. But when we look at Mount Pleasant, and that game I'm specifically speaking about drew 1-1. And if we were to freeze the clip here, you can see Mount Pleasant, they're building up. There's a shadow of a defender there, so they're building up in a 2-3 shape. It's quite wide because they're trying to drag all of the Mobay players around. Mobay at this point, they're in a mid-block, but they're still relatively man-marking these Mount Pleasant players. So it's very difficult for Mount Pleasant to progress the ball through the middle of the pitch. And that's what they want to do. But if you keep the clip rolling, Mount Pleasant are a very intelligent team. They realize that they can't progress the ball centrally. So what they do, they reset. And when they reset and they stop it again here, they've changed their build-up shape. So they include their goalkeeper to get an extra man in build-up, now taking out Wayne Gordon because he has far too much ground to cover here. So they change it from a 2-3 to a 3-2, but move one of their outfield players more forward to now overload that area. So Mount Pleasant much more comfortable now in this build-up shape. And then when they decide to go forward, and play the ball forward now, you can see it's going to be a long pass, but it's not an aimless one. Because they have that extra body in that attacking area, they're able to win the second ball.
Yeah.
And when they get that central progression, it creates a free man on the left-hand side, on either flank, for them to get that cross in. So it may have been an own goal, it may have been unspectacular to most at first viewing, but when you look at all of the principles that Mount Pleasant bring out, and all the tactical shapes they bring out in just this one fluid move, it shows how dangerous they can be. Now, what can Montego Bay do to counteract this? I think they have to be much more aggressive in their press. They were much more aggressive against Cavalier, especially in the second game. It's good to have a mid-block, but when Mount Pleasant can stretch a team so well, it's going to be difficult for them to sustain that. You can see Devereaux McKenzie get very frustrated because he had to be central first and then come wide. He was too late, and it's going to be very difficult for Montego Bay to keep up with this Mount Pleasant team in these sequences if they're going to be, just a little bit passive. They have to be on them from minute one. Mount Pleasant are well rested. They're a team that, as I said, know how to play the ball around, but so too Montego Bay. And I mentioned that because if Montego Bay can get this team and get their team playing their football, it's going to only bode well for them in terms of keeping the ball, in terms of frustrating Mount Pleasant themselves, and really driving home their home support.
Yeah, can I ask you quickly, how much of a problem will it be for Montego Bay United that they have lost their most potent attacker, Shaniel Thomas, through injury?
It's a very big deal because, as I've always said with Shaniel Thomas, he adds a dimension that many teams don't have. He's a very, very unique profile of player, and that profile of player is one, yes, he's a very potent attacker in front of goal, but what he offers them in terms of driving up the pitch, he's not the fastest player in the league, he's not the strongest player in the league, but he knows how to use his body well. And when it comes down to man marking systems, which Mount Pleasant usually employ, he's a player that can break that system through carries, through just his quick dribbles, and he can really bring his team up the pitch, especially in transitional opportunities. So that's a very big miss, but the thing is with Montego Bay, in that specific position where Shaniel Thomas is deployed right off the striker, they have a wealth of talent there. When you speak about Jordan Fletcher, yes, he has been striking, but he can play there. John Claudio Ferreira played there, and he adds a lot of energy and guile the Brazilian. They also have options off the bench. You can never forget Peter Lee Vassell. Is he fit enough to immediately come in and make a difference right away? Maybe not. But in the second half against tiring legs, he can offer a lot of the things that Shaniel Thomas can offer as well.
And Brian Brown.
And Brian Brown is going to be up front as well. And then when you speak about a player that hasn't been getting a lot of minutes, that's maybe unknown to a lot of Jamaican fans, Che Benny, the man from Trinidad. I'm assuming Mariah will love that little throw-in, but Che Benny is a fantastic technical attacking midfielder, very good ball striking from range, excellent dribbler. He's going to be one, even if he doesn't get a lot of minutes in this playoff, if he's around for Mobay next season, he's going to be one of the best players in the league. I can bet on it.
Yeah, can I ask you quickly too about this crowd support for Montego Bay, because it's expected to be highly energetic. The team boasting players with tremendous Montego Bay vibes.
Yeah.
Coach Paul Teagat Davis, when the team was SEBA before their name changed to Montego Bay United, probably the most iconic player out of Montego Bay United. He's the coach. You mentioned Jordan Fletcher, Peter Lee Vassell, Cornwall College standouts in the schoolboy football. And you get the feeling that fans are turning out in Montego Bay Thursday night to pump a lot of energy into this Montego Bay United team. How significant do you think that will be?
Yeah, I think it's massively significant, and I actually prepared a graphic, and again, it's half and half how consequential this is, because Mount Pleasant were the best team in the regular season across all fronts. But when you look at their ability at home, and when you look at it away from home, it's typically a very stark contrast. And when you look at Mount Pleasant's record, they played 19 games at home, 20 away from home. At home, they had 17 wins, 2 draws, no losses at home. Conceded 3 goals in 19 games at home. Away from home, obviously, there's going to be a fall off. But one thing that can be said, Mount Pleasant won't be playing any games at their home venue during these playoffs. So we've seen teams, especially when they go to the big teams away from home, make it difficult for them, Montego Bay being one. Because Montego Bay played 2 games at Draxall, and they lost both. But when Mount Pleasant went to the Montego Bay Sports Complex, it was a 1-1 draw, and Mount Pleasant had to defend very stoutly for most of that contest. So it's going to be quite difficult, and the crowd support, I think it's going to be a huge crowd, because typically over the past couple of seasons, we only see one side of the Mobay Stadium open. The last time these two teams faced off, they even had to open up the other side, and that was a regular season contest where, obviously there's a lot of excitement, but it's different now. In the playoffs, I can expect that probably both sides of the stadium will be filled, especially seeing that it's a later game, and we all know how much Mobay cares, and St. James and everyone over on that side of the island cares about their football, and it's going to be a great atmosphere. I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, there's no question that Mount Pleasant has been the best team this season based on the body of work that they've done in the regular season. But you sound hesitant to make a call.
Yeah, I'm hesitant right now. I'm not going to lie. I don't come here and I don't cap, I don't lie, and I'm not going to tell you any fibs. I'm quite hesitant. Reason being, because Mount Pleasant made, as that's where the controversy came from, they made a lot of changes to their lineup, to their team, to their squad structure right before the playoffs started. So what I'm intrigued to see is what sort of lineup they're going to use. Are they going to revert back to a Sule Makala in the base of midfield? Are they going to put him at either fullback? Are they going to use Clifford Thomas, one of the best defensive midfielders in the Caribbean? Do they think he's ready for a contest like this? Are they going to use any of the other Haitians? Are they going to insert back Shaquan Davis? They probably will, but he hasn't played in quite a few weeks. Are they going to trust one of their young wingers like Franco Celestine to get that start? I'm not quite sure, and I really just have to see the approach of Mount Pleasant as we go into this game. I know I can expect what Mobay will do, but what will Mount Pleasant do? That's my sticking point.
Okay, well, it's two legs, so we'll give you a chance to
appreciate it
to make a call after the first leg is finished. I suspect that Ricardo will be a little bit nervous about Arnett Gardens and their Cavalier assignment. I don't think Arnett has beaten Cavalier in 7 meetings now. The last time they beat them would have been February 2023. Having said that, a lot of the matches were drawn as opposed to Cavalier winning. Yeah. But how nervous should Ricardo be about his Arnett Gardens team?
I mean, he should be nervous because it's a big game. It's a massive game. It's a semi-final. And last season, Cavalier beat Arnett Gardens in the semi-final to advance. So based on the history of things and them not beating them in quite some time, it's going to be difficult. But this is a different Arnett Gardens team, and I think it's a different Cavalier team as well. Because if you were to look at the goals and the chances they would have conceded against Portmore in the quarterfinal, when you look at the number of games Cavalier have had to play this season, the size of their squad that isn't the best, Arnett Gardens are a team that I think, along with Mount Pleasant, have rotated the best in the league so far this season. They have a very deep squad. They're well rested, and against this Cavalier team that would have played on Friday, then come back and play on Monday, 120 minutes. A lot of their players out on their legs. Shaquille Stein couldn't play in that quarterfinal due to injury. Jalmara Calvin, their leading goal scorer with 20 goals, he left the game with an injury as well. We're not sure if he will be able to play. They started as 17-year-old Jamoy Dennis up front for the second leg of that quarterfinal. So if there's any time for this Arnett Gardens team to rise up and get the better of Cavalier, it's going to be in the here and now. Reason being, I think these are the two best transitional teams in the Jamaica Premier League. And in that case, I do think that Arnett Gardens will have that flair, will have that tempo to get the better of Cavalier, especially in the first leg.
Yeah, and especially with the quality that Arnett have up front, you don't expect them to create the chances that Portmore United did and not put them away. You mentioned it though, Lige, and I want to get, just a general understanding of what you favor. Is it the team with the matches behind them, in this case, Montego Bay United and Cavalier, or the teams fresh, Arnett Gardens and Mount Pleasant, because they had the rest period?
I think it's very situational, because in terms of Montego Bay, they have been rotating well as well, and they have I think they're just coming into their own. So the extra games, I think, has helped them to really get some momentum going into that Mount Pleasant clash. Mount Pleasant, I think they'll be fine because of the quality they have, and they have been playing their practice matches, all of that. So I think that's going to be a much closer matchup. It doesn't favor Cavalier, in my opinion, one, because you can see the defensive drop-off that they have had, and then Arnett Gardens are a fresh team. As I said, Arnett Gardens play the quickest, best transitional football in the Jamaica Premier League. And against those fresh attackers, the Warner Browns, the Fabian Reeds, Rashiki Kelson, Shea Smith, Jaheim Thomas, who's in fantastic form as well. All of those players coming into their best form fresh, running at tired legs of Cavalier, it might not be the best matchup for them.
Yeah. I know you weren't willing to call the Mount Pleasant Montego Bay United contest. Are you ready to call the Arnett Gardens versus Cavalier encounter?
I would be more confident to put a bet on Arnett Gardens. I think because of all the factors that I would have said, and this is obviously not discounting Cavalier, because as I said on yesterday's show, they just know how to win games.
Yeah.
If they're going to have to sit back and not play their usual game, they somehow usually find a way to score. But I think in this instance, with all the support, because Arnett Gardens are a well-traveled team as well, they will bring some fans to Mobay. And we know when they get back to Sabina, it's going to be a Red Sea out there at Sabina as well. So I think Arnett Gardens, should they really put Cavalier to the sword on tomorrow, I'm going to be favoring Arnett Gardens to make it to the Premier League final.
Well, this is one time I hope your guruism is correct.
Yeah, we'll wait and see, of course. But what's for sure is we'll have two really exciting matches. Leger, I hope after the first leg you can give us a prediction for the Montego Bay Mount Pleasant
of course.
matchup.
Should be pretty easy then.
Yeah.
Unless it could be a draw, who knows?
Yeah. Well, keep up the good work on the JPL and we'll talk again really soon.
Of course.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, I mentioned yesterday about the controversial Tivoli Montego Bay United match. I'd said Daniel Parchment was a referee for the first match. Parchment actually did the Portmore Cavalier game. It was Christopher Mason that was in charge of that contentious Tivoli Montego Bay United first leg quarterfinals. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, no problem there, Lance. All right, up on a break and we'll be back.